We're going to open the meeting. We're going to start our Planning Commission meeting for July 17th, 2024. It's 6:03 p.m. So we'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And welcome to everybody that's online. And before we go any farther, I want to welcome Scott to the Planning Commission. It's his first meeting, and we're glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Okay, so I will look for a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
This is Bethany, so moved.
This is Barb, I'll second that.
I will call for the vote.
Bethany, aye.
Barb, aye.
Scott, aye.
Lynn, aye. Now I will look for a motion for the approval of the May 15th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
This is Barb. Motion to approve.
Scott, I'll second.
Okay, motion second. I will call for the vote.
Bethany, abstain.
Barb, aye.
Scott, aye.
Lynn, aye. Okay, number 5 is a discussion on the upcoming ordinances. Ordinance 24-XX, Chapter 7A, Housekeeping and Table of Content, pages 2 through 8. Eleanor, do you want to lead us in this?
Yes. It's been a minute since I've seen everybody here, so glad to be back in the Planning Commission. The first page of our packets is a general overview of the ordinances that are on the docket for the rest of 2024. For the past couple years, we've been doing a lot of ordinances every year. We've really changed this code, and so the two that are before you today for the discussion is a lot of housekeeping of we did a lot really fast and some things fell through the cracks, whether that be typos or things that were not clarified very well, or just organizational things that fell through when we were doing this huge upheaval of our code over the last couple of years. So that's what we're working on today. But since we have everything pretty locked away and organized, we can start moving on to the next phase of redoing our code and starting to work on that. There are a couple things on this first page of updates on new ordinances. The first one is our cannabis ordinances, which is going to be coming up, and we're going to be working a lot on that in the next couple months. That's going to be our main focus on ordinances, because that does need to be in place by January 1st. So that has a pretty firm deadline of when we need to have that pretty much sorted out. Our first big conversation on that is going to be our next meeting, August 7th. We're going to have a joint meeting of the City Council and the Planning Commission come together and start really hammering down some of the big policy decisions so we can start working out that cannabis ordinance. So that's the big one coming up, but let's sort out the little housekeeping things that we need to do first. There are a couple of ordinances on this list that aren't going to be coming before you at the Planning Commission, but I wanted you to be aware of them because there's stuff that the staff is working on and there's stuff that's going to change. And one of those is the second one that I've mentioned, which is low floor elevation driveways and illustrations. Those are common things that we often get asked or questioned on with contractors and building officials, where there's just some things that don't quite line up between what we have in our code and what's in the state building officials code and what our engineer thinks. And so it's constantly like coming up and having to sort out those issues. So we're going to try to work on getting that cleaned up and clear so we have those answers without having to go back and forth between a bunch of different departments every time something comes up with those. The next one on the list was the regulation for short-term rentals. This is something that we mentioned quite a while ago and has just been sort of sitting on the back burner. And I was hoping to get some sort of guidance on whether we still want to pursue that kind of regulation and what we are hoping as an outcome of that. Because we are seeing more Airbnbs and that sort of business pop up in Columbus. And if we want to have those require a license or a registration of some sort, put some sort of regulations on how those are operated, and then have a discussion on how we would then enforce those rules if we decide to put those in. So if anyone has some real burning passion to work on that, please let me know what your thoughts and desires are on that. And then the next two are also ones that will probably not be coming before Planning Commission. The septic systems ordinance, which is a major overhaul of our septic system chapter that the building department has been working on for quite some time and should be coming before City Council. If anyone is interested in attending those or getting more information, contact me or Carissa, and we can talk to you about what we've been working on there. And the next one was our animal control stuff, which was started back in 2022 and then sort of fell on the back burner. And I'm trying to pick up the pieces of where we left off and see how to move forward with that. I was not here when it was being worked on, so it's a lot of piecing together a little puzzle piece with that one. The last one on the list was our large animal ordinance, which is something that has been mentioned quite a few times, and I am not entirely sure what the direction on that is wanting to be. So I want to get some work done on it. I know that some people want an overhaul of how we monitor or regulate large farm animals and large animals. But if there are any specifics, I would love to hear it. Now, that doesn't mean that all of those little questions that I just gave you does not mean that you have to come out and tell me right now. If you have something, fantastic. If not, you can email me and we can start that discussion for those two.
Curious about how and what, like, why are certain things, planning commission things, and other things go straight to city council?
Yes, so.
Is that a dumb question?
No, that's perfectly okay question. So the ones that I mentioned that go straight to city council do not have anything to do with planning and zoning. They are building department, they are peer regulation, nuisance, abatement, that kind of stuff. And there are no of our usual ordinance amendments, like our design standards, our where do we put these, what are our setbacks, what are our lighting look like, and that's really what the Planning Commission focuses on. So with like cannabis, short-term rentals, we could do some regulation stuff with you guys on zoning, where do we want to have these allowed? Same with large animal ordinances, how do we want to allow like hobby farm enclosures to look? That stuff is planning and zoning, but the floor elevations, how we regulate our septic systems, all of that stuff does not necessarily have to come to Planning Commission. If you have thoughts on it, you are welcome to ask or come up and talk to me about it. That's okay.
I am curious about the septic situation. Like, what's happening there? Like, what's changing? Is this the right spot to ask this? Like, is this the right time to ask that, or should I just talk to you later?
We can talk.
I can speak a little bit to that if you want me to.
If you would like to.
Yeah, there's various ordinances at the county level, at the state level, at the local level, and they don't line up. And there's also language in ours that leaves a lot of interpretation to the inspector. And some of it isn't related to technical interpretation, it's more policy interpretation. So we wanted to make sure that the language in our ordinance lines up with what the state and the county says, and then also clear up some of the more vague references in there that I think has caused some confusion between residents or businesses and our staff level and our then inspector So it's a huge investment. So it's not like if there's, a little miscommunication, it's no big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So.
And there were, I think, 2 or 3 variances that came before you guys regarding septic systems, and that really started this of, oh, we need to look deeper into this code, because if there's a lot of variances about something, that means that something needs to change.
Not working.
I had a question about the large animal ordinance. That was just revised in February of 2022. What is the concern there? And you had a little handout too. I mean, it was really cool. I looked it up. It has pictures and everything and tells people how many, which I think
referenced
is
that
really
handout a lot.
valuable.
I can speak to that too, since you weren't there.
Yes, thank you.
So I think there was work done at that time to help determine the number per acre. But what we didn't talk about is where they can be or what type. There were categories of animals that they were excluded. And there wasn't much in there that referenced sort of what's considered pasture land. So if you had X number of acres and 90% of it was swamp, that's not habitat that you want to have hoofed animals on, but our ordinance doesn't address that. So it's things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect the people? Because I went door to door, and there's a lot of people that have actually breed horses, and is that going to affect them negatively, or?
I don't think so, because the people who do that care about the habitat that the animals are in. I think it's people who move here, they don't know very much about large animals. Now they have 10 acres or 5 acres, and they think, yeah, let's get, 4 horses. And I mean, we just had a guy down the road that had 15 pigs. And they got out and they were rooting around in the park, and there was nothing in our ordinance that said you can't have 15 pigs right in town.
I was surprised about that home.
Yeah.
Just going door to, because I'm familiar with pigs. I lived in rural Mankato, and they really do not smell nice.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine 50.
Is that the same house that had there was like chickens that kept being on the road?
I don't know if it's the same. I know they had chickens too, but I don't know if it's the same one. So, I mean, I don't think anybody's looking to say you can't do this. It's more about putting language in there. So if there really is, it's not reasonable to think you can have that many animals on this property, or they're so close to their neighbors that, any large animals would really be a problem. It's to address things like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I guess if nobody has any questions on those, feel free to bring them up later in this conversation if you think of something. But we can move on to our 2 little housekeeping amendments. The first one, sorry, neither of them are numbered, but next time you see them, they'll have numbers on them, was the general housekeeping for the whole of Chapter 7A. Dean really combed through the whole of 7A, specifically in the titles and the way things are structured, to help make some edits specifically around when the CI Light District came in, and there were some things that didn't make it into titles. It didn't make it, or the wrong things made it into titles. And that's what this ordinance is to clean that up. It's renumbering some stuff, making sure that light is in bold in the title, because there have been quite a few people that have mixed those up because it's not clearly labeled. And then finally, the section 7A 824, which accidentally had limited in the title, which did cause some confusion and issues. And looking through minutes and talking to Megan, who originally drafted this, said that yes, it is not supposed to be the contractor yard limited referenced in this section. It is supposed to be the contractor yard. So that is a clarifying thing that was supposed to make it into the original adoption of this ordinance, and wasn't. And then a complete rehaul of the table of contents for Chapter 7A. I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but it is pretty hard to navigate the table of contents of this chapter. There's lots of random reserved for future uses bolded. We talked to lawyers to make sure that we could take those out, but we can, and do some renumbering, make sure that everything is consistent with each other, so all of the districts have the same format of going in the right order and having the same labeling conventions, combining them and making sure that all of the page numbers are correct, just fixing up the table of contents. So that's our first ordinance. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I don't. No.
Perfect. And then the second one that we were talking about today is our the entirety of 7B, section 300. When you are looking at our current sign regulations, it still has never been updated to the new freeway corridor districts. It still has commercial showroom districts. They don't line up with what our current zoning map looks like. They were never updated whenever the districts were changed. And so this one, there is very little substance being changed here, but it is actually making the language line up to the zoning districts that make sense for it. And it's cutting about 5 pages off of it because we combine, instead of, here, the section B304 on page 2 of 9 on the bottom of this. It says community commercial, general commercial, highway commercial, all of these in the original, in the current code, it just has community commercial, these 2 pages of sign regulations, general commercial, these 2 pages of sign regulations, and they're the same content. So combining them all will make it a lot easier for people to read and save me time tracking stuff down. So that would be nice. And then the only other substantive change is adding the mixed use districts in and adding regulations for the commercial developments, because a lot of our mixed uses have been residential, and so we have regulations for those, but we didn't have anything for commercial developments in those mixed use districts. So we added in regulations for that. I think that was it. Oh, and changing the wall signs from, in the rural residential district, the wall signs for residential zone businesses, which we recently changed. We no longer have residential zone businesses. We do have home occupations, so we had that match our new sign regulations for our home occupations and removed the reference to residential zone businesses. So a good overhaul of the sign regulations, but nothing really changed in the substance. However, if there is any large concerns with this chapter, this would be the time to do it. When combing through it, I didn't see any issues. I haven't heard a lot of complaints from people in the freeway district with how our signs are regulated, the size, the setbacks, all of that stuff. But if there are signs that you think are too big or obnoxious or needed, if you need any change in this, this is the time to talk about that as well.
Forever hold your peace.
Or forever hold your peace. Well, no, we can always have another ordinance.
Or hold your peace for a while. I think it's good work.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
On the section 7B 304, where all of the districts got combined, in the original version, were each of those separate? Then they just repeated the same content, is that what you said?
Yeah, so originally the sign district only had they didn't have these districts. They had, commercial showroom and general business, I think, stayed. And yes, it was the exact same thing, just repeated twice.
So where I'm going with this is each one of these numbers, like 7B 303 is mixed use high density. They kind of, one number goes with one district. And I'm just wondering whether putting 3 districts, is it 3 districts, 4 districts, however many, under one number might create future problems if you end up thinking that you might call something out differently in one of them, but now they're all under one number, whether keeping them separate with different numbers might make more sense. And I realize that the horse racing district is 7B 305, so that's not how it must have originally been organized. I'm not saying we should do it, I'm just calling it out because I don't know if that creates more problems down the road if you do want to call out different standards for different districts within that numbering system.
No, that is a good point, and something that I would probably talk to legal about, of how that codification works. If we decide to pull one out, say, actually, we want to change how the general commercial district is, and we want to pull that out, how would we do that in the future if the numbers are all the same? Is that what we're?
Yeah, because I think you'd have to assign them different numbers, which is going to then affect everything that follows. And it might be easier to do that now since you're doing it rather than wait until it comes up. But it also might just be 6 of one, half dozen of another. So
so in my mind, when we pull that out, we would just renumber the ones down the line. We could also move horse racing to a further number and leave a little gap for future changes in the numbering. Or we could put them all in separate. So those are our 3 options on that.
Right.
Eleanor, I just wanted to point out on section 7B-34 on page 2, you have community commercial CC and then general commercial CC. I think it should be GC.
You are correct. Thank you.
Good catch.
Well, that's what we're here for,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Alrighty.
Does anybody have any questions for Eleanor? Okay, so do you want to just, like every meeting, pull one and go through and, because I'd like to see what the state guidelines are and the county guidelines and what ours read so that we can do ordinances, so we can, kind of come up with some language that fits us. Because like the large animal, we need to, it's kind of like we didn't, our pause, it wasn't zoned.
Yeah.
So then we had to backtrack. So I'd like to look at it and then us put our heads together with what animals do we need to add to it. Instead of just when it comes up, then we got to scramble and go backwards. Where if we use the foresight to go forward.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a good system.
Or a night where we don't have anything, we could have a couple of them to just kind of dig
Work
into
through
and
really dig into. I agree.
yeah. But good work. It's something you got to look at, and when we don't have a lot on the agenda, it's kind of nice since we're coming here to be productive and have something to do.
Yeah. So I will start working on really digging into that large animal ordinance. It sounds like that's something that everybody wants to work on.
Perfect.
With these housekeeping ordinances, are we good? Do we want to call a public hearing at some point soon? Or do we want to continue discussing?
I don't think we need a public hearing. Do you?
I mean, I think some of them are,
We legally do have to have a public hearing for these.
Okay. Well, then we need a public hearing, I guess.
So it's just a matter of if we
don't
call it
need a
now or if
public
we talk about it
hearing.
more before we call it?
Exactly. Policy-wise, we come here, we do a little discussion on any ordinance, we call a public hearing, and then go. Ordinances always need a public hearing. I can throw it on a night where we have other things.
So that the guy who wants to keep an elephant in his pond can come and talk about it?
Yes.
Usually it's hippopotamus.
The elephants need to take a bath.
I wouldn't do it, I mean, unless you have to do a public hearing, I mean, you do?
Yeah.
Well,
Any ordinance always needs.
public hearing.
I don't feel the need to talk about it further, but I don't know, Janet brought up a point that I don't know how significant that is, so with the whole like numbering thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if to what extent that would need to be, but I think it looks nice.
All right. I mean, the goal is to get this in the books as soon as possible, so let's get through it.
Okay.
Otherwise, Jack, would you like to come up and talk about the technology?
So, are we moving on to number 6?
Are you okay with that? You can.
Unless you've got something to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add to the ordinance discussion. I think Ellie did a very good job on that, and I'm sure she'll make those corrections, and everything will be ready to go at the next meeting. She gets to talk about the good, fun stuff. I get to talk about the bad stuff. So when I'm here and we're giving this presentation, it's already been given to the City Council, Planning Commission's next, and then the EDA and the park boards. It involves our interactive technology meetings or our virtual meetings. In order to comply with our open meeting laws, there are state statutes that address this. And I'm going to give the summary view of it, and if you have any questions, we can follow that up when I'm finished. But it says a city meeting may be conducted by interactive technology in compliance with the open meeting law if all the following requirements are met. Number one, at least one member has to be physically present in the building. So it means you can have a meeting with interactive technology or virtual attendance if only one person's here. However, all members must be able to hear and see each other, and all discussion and testimony presented at any location at which at least one council member is present. So you have to see each other, and you have to be able to hear them to conduct the meeting. All members of the public at the regular meeting location must also be able to hear and see all discussion, testimony, and votes of all the members. All votes are conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. And here's where the stickier stuff comes in. Each location at which a member is present is open and accessible to the public. So that means if you're attending remotely, wherever you are, has to be accessible to the public. However, a meeting that satisfies the requirements of the open meeting law, even though a member of the public body participates from a location is not open to the public, if the member has not participated more than 3 times in the calendar year from a location that is not open or accessible, and the member is serving in the military and is at a required drill, deployed or on active duty, or the member has been advised by a healthcare professional against being in a public place for personal or family medical reasons. So it means you can do 3 virtual meetings a year if you meet those conditions. So it's a lot stricter than what we've done in the past, but in order to comply with the open meeting laws, we're presenting that to all of our commissions, committees, boards, and councils, so we don't run afoul of these regulations.
And these are Minnesota laws.
That's correct. That's state statute. And again, just the brief rule card on it is if you wish to attend virtually, you can do it 3 times a year. And even that has requirements that were mentioned. But when you do, you have to notify the city of where you are, where you'll be, and where you are is open to the public at that point.
So in other words, you can't do it from your home.
You can, but then your home is open to the public.
Yeah.
If somebody
That's
knocks,
So if
funny.
you're sick
I'm
and you're
very entertained by this.
yeah.
And there has been some discussion at the legislature to change some of this, but that didn't go anywhere this year. You know, is it too restrictive? Maybe so, but that's the one that we have to comply with at this time. So just a heads up, and if you have any questions on that, or you know, if you look like if you think you're going to be absent for a meeting, give me a call and I can walk you through what you need to do to be able to attend virtually.
I had a question about when people are on the screen. Some of them just have a phone number. They don't have to identify who they are.
They should, and there are occasions where if a phone number comes up and we don't recognize it, we haven't let them in or admitted them to the meeting. I've been kind of looking at that and familiarizing myself with the numbers. So there was one person that attends these regularly. She's a citizen, and she'd tried to get in before, and we wouldn't let her in because we didn't recognize her number. And we're also going to look at a policy called for Zoom bombing. It's these people that try to disrupt a meeting virtually.
Right.
And that's why we're a little leery of phone numbers. We'd rather at least have a name so we can recognize that. So
Yeah, because it's more common now, and especially with the atmosphere and the.
We had that happen a couple months ago, didn't we? Somebody was on here like saying weird stuff.
Yeah, so is it set up where they have to be invited in and you have to, is there any way to ask a name when they want to get in?
the way that Zoom is set up, it just has who's trying to get in and a button to say admit or not admit. There is no capability to be able to like chat to them of saying, hey, can you
Tell me who you are.
tell me who you are before I let you in?
It's either or, but they
either or.
can send us, they could send us a chat request if we see it on the screen.
My thought process is that they sign in when they come with their name and their address back there. So is there some way to capture, you know, instead of just looking at a black box with a phone number, actually knowing who's dialing in?
Well, it makes it very difficult unless you've got a tremendous memory. There are certain numbers that you do recognize, especially if you have admitted someone and they let you know who they were. We make an effort to try to have at least a list of that, or I try to memorize them too, so we can let those in upon that recognition. But it's a challenge to do that, and it would be best if we maybe even had some type of little instructions on the screen or when they log in, or people that do that, so we can give them, here's the process for doing, so you'll be sure to get in and not be denied admission.
So to recap it, you can miss 3 meetings a year.
You can attend 3 meetings a year virtually.
Okay.
Now, I think the Planning Commission has bylaws that says you have to attend at least 80% of the meetings.
And if you go on the webinar and come into the meeting from home, you have to, do we have to state our address so that people know where we're at? And you have to have your door unlocked, so if somebody wants to come visit, they can.
Yeah, that's correct, and you really need to notify us in advance, if you know enough in advance, so that we can make that announcement too at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Really funny.
Jack, is the requirement for those 3 times you still have to either be in the military or have a doctor or some medical excuse. It's not like,
That's correct.
my hair's not right today, so I'm going to do it on Zoom.
That's correct.
Gotta put a paper bag over your head.
That's why they make.
No, because they have to see you. That's the other thing. If you're going to be on Zoom, you have to leave your camera on, and they have to see you because that's part of the law too,
Yep.
which we've not enforced. So
That's why they make baseball caps.
yeah, that might work for you. Anyway, okay.
I thought maybe Sue would turn her camera on since we were talking about it, but she didn't.
No, because she's not. She's
I will say.
she's a member of the
okay,
public.
so I'll just address this.
What's that, Sue?
Can you hear me okay?
There she is.
Yeah.
Oh, she looks.
I'm having an okay hair day, but I am outside on the deck. Anybody can come and see me, but I'm not a member of this
Right.
board.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like I don't know. I'm not actually considered a citizen, but I'm not part of the board. So that's why I didn't think I needed to have my camera on.
You don't. I was just teasing you.
Okay. All right. But I'm here and listening.
So if you have any questions about the policy and the state statute, feel free to give me a call and we'll walk you through any issues or things that you come up and see what we can do to make sure you meet all the requirements for attending virtually.
Well, thank you for the meeting requirements, because I don't think we're always, things change. Years ago, you didn't have the interactive technology, so it's a good refresher to have. And with new people on the planning commission, it's good to put it out there.
Well, during the pandemic too, things
Yeah.
got kind of lax.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we're going back after COVID, even though that's been in our rearview mirror now for about 2 to 3 years, that we're trying to get caught back up on to make sure we're doing everything properly. And the reason for that is the way our society is today. If the planning commission makes a decision that's challenged and, we have a member that's not attending a meeting the state statute, it may have an effect on what happens. May not exactly overturn it, but it may make us go back and have to repeat a process.
Okay. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we will go to public open forum. Is there anybody here that would like to say a few words to the Planning Commission? Is there anybody online that would like to say a few words to the Planning Commission? Hearing none, we will move on to the Planning Commissioner's report. Bethany, do you have anything?
I do not.
Barb? Scott?
Nothing.
Okay, and I will just mention we are starting to get geared up for Fall Fest, so if you want to help, let us know, and we will be getting going. I'm looking forward to it. So, having a petting zoo this year.
Elephants?
You've got elephants on the brain.
I guess she does. Okay. Planning and zoning tech report.
I did send out an email earlier today and mention it a minute ago, but the next meeting, which will be on August 7th, is going to be a joint meeting, and we will really be tackling that cannabis moratorium. So just a reminder of that. I know that I said that we were thinking about July 31st, but it's not going to work out. So just letting you know that that is not what's going to happen. That's it.
So I will look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Bethany. I motion to adjourn.
This is Barb, I second.
And I will call for the vote.
Bethany, aye.
Barb, aye.
Scott, aye.
And Lynn, I meeting adjourned at 6:42.